Hello, my name is Howard Lake from UK Fundraising. This month we've been talking about CRMs, fundraising CRMs on the site, and today I'm delighted to be joined by two very experienced CRM consultants, experts, who will be talking about the topic of tips when getting started with a new CRM project. So I'm delighted to welcome Heather Black, Managing Director at Economic Change, and Julia Whitehead, who is Head of Customer Success at Giveclarity. Welcome. Thank you very much indeed for joining me today. Heather, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us about your CRM and other experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Heather Black, Managing Director of Economic Change. I started working with Salesforce back in 2010 while I was running my own non-profit that supported organisations, or supported impact measurement and young people into employment and education and entrepreneurship. And that led me on a journey really to help other charities and non-profits to implement Salesforce CRM systems to manage their fundraising, their impact measurement, their marketing, a whole range of different things. And so 10 years on now, I've worked with over 300 non-profits on 600 projects and thoroughly enjoy what I do every day. So I'm very keen to give back best practice advice and thought leadership. So it's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Julia, tell us about what you do at Giveclarity.
Hi Howard, yes, I'm Julia. I've been working similarly in the sector for around about 10 years now, and I started with a non-profit and we chose a new CRM at the time, which happened to be Salesforce, and then I moved over to work for a consulting partner, which I've been doing for the last 10 years. So I had first-hand experience of choosing a new CRM, and hopefully I can pass some of those tips on today, what we've learned over the years. Giveclarity works with charities from small to the very largest out there, so we've got a range of experience within the organisation. Happy to be here today.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, Julia, I think you're going to get started. We've got 6 tips, and you're going to get started with the first one. Do you want to tell us what the first tip is for choosing?
Yes. Tip number 1 is to set clear goals. So when you're starting on a new CRM project, it's really important to do this, and there's 2 main reasons really. The first is so you can tell potential partners what success means to you, and you can articulate that to them. And second is so that you know when you've achieved it, and so that you can use it as a measure of success. Sometimes I speak to charities and they say to us, we'd like a new CRM, but they're not able to tell us why exactly and what difference it's going to make to their organisation. So think about what problems you're trying to solve. How will you know if you've been successful? And what can you do better after you've implemented the new CRM? Some examples we've had in the past are people want real-time information so they can make better decisions. They want to allow staff to access the CRM from home or on the move as easily as they can from the office. And one of our clients had business continuity as a key goal. So they wanted to know that they could seamlessly move from one CRM to the other. So just some examples there to get you thinking. Make them specific and measurable goals, and make sure that you all share the same goals on your project, otherwise you'll be going in different directions. Finally, don't try and achieve everything at once. So if you have a long list of goals, break them up into smaller phases. Over to tip number 2, Heather.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Julia. So tip number 2 is about creating a project team. So when you think about a project team, there's different roles and responsibilities. So I'm just going to talk through 5 different areas here. The first is there needs to be an internal executive sponsor who is on the senior leadership team and is really excited, on board and enthused about what the CRM is going to do for the organisation. And their role is not only to commit and secure money for the project, and going back to Julia's point, there has to be a clear return on investment, investing 10 grand, 20, 30, 100,000 pounds in a CRM, there has to be clear goals and outcomes that you want to envision. So you're only going to put money into that pot if there's those clear goals there. And with that then unpacks, okay, it's going to make these level of changes. So what time commitment are we going to give to this project? And that's not only the project team, but also all of the people on the ground have to commit some time to designing the system and training in the system. And there is that time required from all staff in this. So that needs to be accommodated. And the role of the exec sponsor is to communicate what value the CRM is going to give, to communicate those goals that Julia talked about, so everybody is clear on the vision for change, about what's going to happen and why, because that is part of change management. It's about getting people excited, on board, and clear about why the CRM is important to them. The second type of person in the project team is an internal project manager. And they are herding the sheep, if you like. They're coordinating and managing the implementation project and making sure that everybody internally is doing what they need to do to get ready for this, and all the ducks are in a line, if you like. And similarly, they might then be working with an external consultancy and managing them. And so everything co-aligns. So you do need somebody who's sort of coordinating all of those aspects. The third person is a system manager. Now, the system manager might be also the project manager, so you don't necessarily need two different people there. But in some organisations, you might have a different role. Now, quite often we'll see charities where they'll upskill somebody to become the system manager, and certainly with Salesforce, we see that a lot because they can learn how to be a Salesforce admin. Or equally, they might hire somebody in part-time, full-time to take on the administration of the system, and that allows you to help onboard people, continue to evolve the system, and also maintain compliance with the system. So it's really important to have that role allocated. The fourth type of role is CRM champions. So within different departments and teams, you want to identify the person that is, again, most excited about the CRM system, understands the value, is a little bit techie, so they get their head around how the system operates, and they can then bring everybody along with them and gather requirements, train people, and sort of really embed it within that team and department well. And the fifth, as I touched on before, is it does benefit to bring an external consultancy in who can bring that best practice knowledge and experience and help you get the most out of the system on the long term, rather than trying to do it yourself necessarily with the right direction in place, because that potentially could fail. So speaking to experts and having them involved will help with an implementation. So that's tip 2. Back over to Julia for tip 3.
Thanks, Heather. So tip number 3, and you're going to say that I'm bound to say this, but the next tip is to choose a partner that actually understands fundraising. So if you decide to work with a partner, and obviously that's your choice ultimately, but think about the fact that just like in any sector, the CRM sector has partners who have different specialisms. So it's important to choose one who understands charity and also understands fundraising, if that's what you're wanting to be achieving on the CRM. So, for example, ask them how many projects similar to yours that they've worked on in the past, and get them to talk to you about it and tell you how it worked. Do they know about things like GDPR, gift aid, direct debits, and the different types of issues that you will face within the fundraising world? They should be able to advise you on best practice, what other charities have done and how they've faced various challenges, and help you get your CRM up and running much quicker than if you were to do it on your own, and also quicker than a partner who has less experience in the area. On to the next tip.
Brilliant, thank you, Julia. So the next tip is about the value of being agile. And agile project management is the norm for technology projects. Most people might be aware of waterfall and more traditional Prince 2 methodologies, but agile came about because it felt that more traditional approach wasn't really attuned with technology projects. So when we talk about agile, you're talking about having a fixed budget and a fixed timescale, but the requirements are more fluid and prioritized throughout the course of the project. And the reason that becomes a valuable process is that there's rarely a detailed technical specification at the front. It's not clear on how many email templates there'll be, how many fields need to be developed, what processes need to be put into place. And a charity will say to me, well, how much is it going to cost? And I'm saying, well, it's hard for us to estimate at a very detailed level because we don't have the level of detailed technical requirements. We can certainly give you an estimate, and quite often they can be aligned, but quite often it's like, well, tell us what your budget is. Most organizations will have a fixed budget, and then let's do a design workshop and work through your processes, identify what all the technical elements are, and then we can cost that out for you in that level of detail. So for some organisations, it can be beneficial to do those design workshops initially, get your head around what all the requirements will be, and that will give you a more of a guaranteed price, if you like. Whereas the other approach is to say, okay, we've got this budget available, we're going to commit the £10,000 or the £100,000, and we're going to work through the requirements as we go. And quite often, Agile takes its place because technology is advancing all the time. It means you can change priorities as you go through, and it has been proven over time again within a lot of research reports that it's the best way to produce good outcomes on technology projects. So it's worth checking that out and finding out more. So let's go to tip 5. Julia, back to you.
Thanks, Heather. So tip number 5, following on from what Heather said about the executive sponsor who is really critical in any project, equally as important are the end users. So the more that you can involve end users in testing from day one, the more success we found that you'll have with your project, with the various projects that we've worked on. So involve people at all levels and from different teams, and make it clear to them what their role is and what you want them to test. For example, they can be testing things to give you feedback all the way along the way back to the Agile process that Heather mentioned. It may be simple things such as where they want something on the page layout, what values they want in a certain drop-down list. But you're much more likely to get a better end product if you involve those people, and you're more likely to get the new CRM adopted within the organisation because their views have been heard from the start. Remember, they're also likely to influence other users. So the more you can involve them, they'll become advocates of the new CRM. And also remember, you can never test too much. So test, and test again. Thanks. Next tip, final tip.
Right. Yes. Final tip. So leads on really nicely from your point, Julia, about empowering the team. So just to echo really what Julia says, getting end users involved in the design of the process is really important for change management and encouraging user adoption. There's nothing worse than delivering a product CRM to a team and then saying, well, this doesn't reflect our processes. Why weren't we consulted? This doesn't work for us. And immediately there's that upfront, resistance to using the system. And sadly, I have seen that in some organisations that are quite a top-down culture. And it's being mindful of your culture, because some charities will be top-down and will, the decisions will be made at management level, and they'll be pushed down to the end users to use the system in a certain way. But that does come with challenges with change management. So if you can adopt an approach where end users are involved in the design process, and that might be through a range of elicitation techniques like workshops, questionnaires, shadowing, there's a whole range of different ways to do it. You can then really evolve and design the CRM system to align with your terminology, to align with your processes, to realize the benefits, not only for the organization and their strategic plan, but also realize benefits for all the end users, to make their life easier. Like some of my most heartwarming outcomes is that a team member will say to me, this reduces all my admin, and it means I'll get home on time at 5 o'clock to see my kids. And just making end users happier, that their life will be better through using a CRM, is what makes my job so satisfactory. And that's the type of difference you want to have. Yes, you want to help an organisation, a charity, triple their impact, triple their fundraising. They're brilliant outcomes. But what's really important by empowering the team is that it makes their job easier. It makes them perform better at their job, and it makes them happier in their life and in their work. And they're the key outcomes that you want to look for when you're empowering a team with using the system. Now, if you're rolling out the system, think about different learning styles, because there's different approaches to training, because learning styles, whether they're audio digital, kinesthetic or visual, they all require a slightly different training approach. So think about how you engage people in the training process, in the design workshops, demoing the product all the way through. And my very final point brings me back to something I mentioned earlier. If you have Salesforce champions, CRM champions within the whole process and representing different departments, then they will help enthuse everybody. It shouldn't be down to 1 or 2 people to engage and enthuse everybody. You want to find those people who are early adopters, who are really involved in this process, really excited about doing it, and get them involved in teaching and training and gathering requirements all the way through. And they should be there from the outset, not when the CRM is implemented. Like, get them on board early, create a job role and responsibility for them as a long-term champion, like make it something that's part of their role, and then you'll fly. So I think, you know, that sums up our really great series of top tips. And I think if you put those things in place, you're off to a good start.
Thank you very much indeed to both of you for a huge amount of practical advice contained just within those 6 tips. So I'm sure many fundraisers will benefit from that considerably. So thank you very much indeed for giving us ideas on getting started with a new CRM tip. I'm just going to say thank you very much to Heather Black from Economic Change, and also the recruitment agency Supermums as well. And for Julia Whitehead, thank you Julia Whitehead as well, from Giveclarity. Thank you both.
Thank you.